Welcome to You, Me, and All Things She. Our podcast is about all aspects of being a woman, from motherhood to careers, romantic relationships to family relationships and dynamics, and everything in between. It's a chance to learn, explore, and feel what's genuine and imagined as a woman in this world, along with multi-generational conversations that will stimulate your soul. So sit back, laugh, smile, and even cry a little along with us as we begin our journey together. You, me, and all things she. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of You, Me, and All Things She. Deb here. And I am super stoked about this particular topic because we are going to talk about today how to stay focused on your goals and achieve the success that you've always dreamed of. Now, if you're like me, guess what? I've been a goal setter for a long time. However, I haven't always achieved those goals. So let's start at the very beginning, defining what a goal is. And a goal is an object of a person's ambition or effort, an aim or desired result. I think about that as a target. So it is that bullseye, what we're going to shoot for. But we also have to understand what success means. And that's the accomplishment of that aim, what's hitting that target and that purpose. And so if we have a target, we have a goal, we achieve success by hitting the target and accomplishing that goal. But unfortunately, that just doesn't always happen in the real world. We've got lots of life that becomes a distraction. We've got family, we've got commitments. We have all sorts of things that sometimes get in the way of us really obtaining our goal. I'm certain that no one listening has ever had an unsuccessful target or an accomplishment that they didn't really quite make it to. Well, okay, I'm not alone, I'm sure. But every successful person that has been my mentor, that I followed, that I've been involved with at all, they've all talked about goal setting. And they all have a very different perspective or way possibly to get there. And what I have found over the years of setting those goals, accomplishing those results, is that there's a few targeted things. Pardon the pun. But we've got to really get laser focused on what that goal is. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that we're going to cover today in this topic. So whether it's your career, whether it's for business purposes, if you own your own business, whether it's a personal accomplishment or personal objective that you want to achieve, in my mind, goals are goals. It's that target that we set. I've talked, I think, about in an earlier episode how for me, when I achieved one of the most major goals I had set in a really long time, I had to really work through some depression afterwards because I couldn't figure out, now that I achieved this goal, what's next. Because leading up to that goal, guess what? And I'll share that story here in a few moments. It was always about achieving the next level, about moving to the next place in that goal process. What I really didn't do, and what I'm going to hopefully we'll talk about today, is enjoying that journey along the way so that when we get to the end, guess what? It's not one and done and it's over with. But unfortunately, we don't always hit the mark. We don't always have the success that we're looking for. The one truth I know for certain is that if we didn't have that goal, if we didn't establish that target to hit, we wouldn't have come anywhere close to it. So just the fact that you're goal setting, if you are, and putting a target out there, you're working towards something. That's like step number one, because if you're not setting goals, then guess what? You have nothing to measure it up against. If you have done any goal setting over your lifetime or career, there's number one foundation for goals. That is to set a very clear and specific goal. The more specific that goal is, the easier oftentimes it is to obtain because it's really very clear. There's no gray or muddy water in the mix. We're not quite sure, how I might get there. Well, no, we are absolutely certain about what we want to achieve in the end. If you've ever heard the term SMART goals, I think one of those missing pieces to the puzzle, though, might be the reason why you didn't achieve the goals that we set. So we're going to just kind of break it down foundationally and talk about the concept of SMART goals. And SMART goals, the S stands for specific. And the more clearly defined and specific you can establish a goal, oftentimes the easier it is to not only know when you hit that mark, but know along the way whether or not you're on course to make it there. And then we have to be able to measure them. That's the M in SMART. Measurable means that we're able to look at that goal from time to time and determine our progress. We're able to see whether or not we are really heading in the right direction, or have we gotten so far off course and don't even know it that there's no way we're going to achieve this goal. So that measurable piece is extremely important in order to be sure that we're heading in the right direction. And then, of course, A stands for achievable. Achievable means that we're not pie in the sky. It's not wishful thinking. It's not I hope, I pray, maybe someday. It's actually going to be something that can be achievable. To say that tomorrow I'm going to be 50 pounds less than I am today, that would almost be a miracle. So it's not really achievable, but can I over 6 months or a year possibly reduce my weight by 50 pounds? That's a possibility. So it truly is achievable, but I've got to make sure that I have every component of my SMART goals in place. And that's the A, which is achievable. And then also the R stands for relevant. Now, is it real? Is it realistic? Is it relevant? Is it truly going to have an impact on your life? Because that is a lot of times what the driver is when the times get tough. If it's relevant, if it's meaningful, if it has value to not only you, maybe others in your life, maybe it has a direct relation to, maybe an income increase or, something that you're going to achieve physically. It might be the reduced weight. So the goal might be to increase healthy eating habits. What the offset of that goal is how are we going to do that? We'll just kind of go back through the process. So my specific is I'm going to eat a very healthy diet, and I'm reducing all of the meat intake within the next month. And then my month is the measurable part of it. So I'm going to stop using any ground beef in any of the meals that I cook in the next month, starting tomorrow. That's measurable. I can measure tomorrow if I cook with ground beef. Guess what? I know I wasn't successful, so pick it up, do it the next day. But ultimately, at the end of the goal of that month, I should be beef free if that was my goal. Is it achievable? Well, the first step is yes. To cut out beef from your diet is absolutely, just ask the vegans and the vegetarians in the world. But it's not just a hopeful, wishful thinking. If I'm a cow farmer that raises beef, is it realistic? Well, maybe not. It could be achievable, but it may not be realistic. And then how relevant is that to me? If I've read articles that is going to help me reduce and have a healthier diet, then maybe it's absolutely relevant for my objective. And then I need to have it very bound to time. That's the T, time bound. I need to be sure I'm tracking that, and I need to have a specific time frame in which that goal is going to be accomplished. And statistically, I don't have a number, but I can almost guarantee with everything inside my being that if you don't set a SMART goal, there's going to be pieces and components of that just don't come to fruition. And then once we've got that goal, that target, what we're going to achieve in the future, now it's time to take a step back and begin to break that down into much smaller steps. So I can't go from cooking with meat and beef every day to day to cooking with no beef in a month if I'm not taking those small incremental steps. Well, it starts with putting my grocery list together and, quite honestly, not buying any beef. So it's not even going to appear on my grocery list, and it certainly isn't going to appear in any of my menu options that I'm going to do or recipes that I'm doing the month ahead. But I got to start with right now. So grocery shopping today, I'm not going to buy any ground beef. It seems sometimes it's daunting. Oh my gosh, I can't accomplish that. But if we break it into those much smaller steps, it now seems to be a little bit more bite size, and we can make those small changes that will lead to that long-term change. We also need to create a plan of action. So getting a little tongue-tied today, I guess. But what steps do we need to achieve to accomplish those goals? If you're not a grocery shopper that writes a list, maybe in order to achieve that accomplishment, is maybe you need to write a list and stick to the list. When I go grocery shopping with my list, I am so much more successful than if I just walk in and meander through the aisles. So maybe that's one way to create my action plan. I'm going to create a weekly menu plan for my family. Maybe I'm going to put my grocery list together. I'm going to shop on this day of the week and just start to create some action plans. And that way you can measure, because you're using that SMART goal concept, you can measure whether or not that's actually being achieved each and every day, each and every week, and you can work toward that progress if you happen to so-called fall off the wagon or don't have success one moment. But if we have that specific plan, we can certainly move forward. And then, of course, eliminate distractions. Well, for me, one of my distractions, if I was really focused on that ground beef concept, is tacos is my downfall. So I would not be able to have tacos, or I would be needing and willing to find a replacement. Now, I can tell you, those of you that aren't vegetarian or vegan, you may not realize, but tofu crumbles are absolutely pretty darn good for tacos. So I have made the alternate switch, and I'm not so unhappy with it. I can tolerate it. I still get that same feeling. But again, the goal is that we need to eliminate the distractions. If I can't do tacos for a few weeks because it's a downfall of mine, then maybe that's where I'm not going to focus on that. What can I do instead? So just finding and eliminating the distractions. And then also, it may be time to take a break. We might need to just kind of give ourselves a chance, get through that day, avoid burnout. And I know that my example of, ground beef, removing that from your diet may not be the best example for taking a break, but sometimes when we're so laser focused on our objective that we let other things that are important in our life kind of go by the wayside. So just take a break. Maybe it's time to go do a walk or a meditation, maybe before you do your grocery list. Think about the things. Maybe it's time to pull out a new recipe book. But again, the idea and the concept is that we're not so focused that we're in this place of burnout. Because when we're in that place of burnout, guess what? We're going to end up probably giving up and giving in. And then our goal is we're back to ground zero, trying to start all over again. And nobody wants that. That's the most self-defeating feeling in the entire world. So don't let yourself get there. Maybe even share that with someone else. It's kind of an extra tip in the mix. But, have an accountability partner, which we'll talk about when we talk about the tips today. But then reward yourself for, those accomplishments, the small ones. You did your grocery list today, great. Then maybe you're going to reward yourself with an extra surprise. Maybe you'll have, rather than the ground beef, maybe you'll buy yourself a little bit of a treat for dessert. Or if you're an extra fruit eater, maybe you'll get some extra fruit in the mix and buy that instead of the ground beef. So find a way to just to reward and acknowledge the accomplishments that you've made. And that will just propel us all forward to continue to do what we're doing in order to achieve the goal. And then most important, I think, of all is never give up. Even though we backslide, even though we don't accomplish the goal, we don't give up on achieving that. So that's the only way that we lose in this whole entire process, is if we completely throw in the towel, we walk away, we say, I'm done, I can't do this. And that's one thing that we raised our children with. We do not use the word can't in our family. And we've even taught our grandson recently. We've had someone else, I think, in the family. I heard it over the weekend saying it. I'm like, we don't use that word. So, let's find a solution. Let's find a way that we can, rather than why we cannot do something. But don't give up. Don't fall victim to the trap of just letting go. Reward and love yourself enough to stick with it, because you have the strength and ability, I know it, to accomplish the goals you want. Now, one of my major goals, I think I've shared in a past episode, was I had a goal to run a marathon. Now, I had started running probably about 15 years ago, and I started because I was ready to change my physical fitness, and I wanted to do it in an inexpensive way, and I figured I was never a runner growing up, but I figured running was an easy way for me to manage my own health, to do it on my own, and make it happen. Well, what I found is that once you get into, or for me anyway, once I became slightly competitive with myself and starting to put those SMART goals together, I had these measurements. Well, I had to go find a tool to help me make it measurable. And so I found that, I think I heard someone talking about the from couch to 5K concept. And I'm like, okay, I don't know about that, but let me go see what I can find. And it was actually a training plan for a 5K. That was my first race. Well, just to let you know, I actually injured myself a couple of weeks before that and was advised not to run that race. So the very first 5K I'd signed up for that I was going to do didn't come to fruition. And I could have very easily just thrown in the towel and said, you know what, maybe running's not for me. Well, that's not the case. So I stuck with it. I've registered for another 5K in the future, gave my body time to heal, and then progressed through once I started running 5Ks, guess what? Now I'm going to move up to 10K races. And now I need to improve my speed. Now I need to improve my distance. And so I started to really challenge myself through the SMART goal concept. And then I wasn't too happy really getting up and running early mornings by myself. So I needed some accountability. Well, I found a run group not too far from me. And so I actually saw a few ladies running on the road, and I stopped into it was a Nike run club. Not that I am advertising for Nike, but I had a local Nike store, and I reached out to that local store and I said, I know you've got a run club. Do you happen to know who these two women were on this day? And they said, yeah, absolutely, we know them. And I said, well, can I leave my phone number in order to connect with them? Because I'd love to connect with someone that's running on that day. And so they passed my phone number along to them. And, 15 years later, we're still friends and we've run lots of races. Well, that just started it all. Because we ran 5Ks together, we had run 10Ks together. I'd mentioned to them that I had a bucket list to run a marathon. Well, next thing I know, we're signing up for a half marathon. So we kind of have to take that in increments and build up. And then finally, a year or so later, I had a friend of mine that I ran with, and she said, I've been thinking about that marathon deal. Would you be interested in running a marathon with me? And I'm like, okay, now we're talking. So I said, what do I have to lose? I have everything to gain, nothing to lose. So absolutely. And so we, as a group of 3, went through the training process. I couldn't train with them because they were doing training extremely early during the week. They had young children, and it just wasn't working for me. I was actually 10 years older than both of them. It just was not going to happen. So my early run days were on the weekends. And so now I've got to train by myself, even though we're doing this as a group effort. We're going to run the race so-called together, but ultimately I was all left up to myself to train. So I had to find a system that worked for me. And again, I went back to the drawing board. I found a training program, made my SMART goals measurable, realistic, they're relevant. They were time-bound. They were all based on the time when I had that. And as I mentioned, that's when after that marathon, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me for a while. I felt empty. I felt quiet. I didn't come home and start running the next day or within a couple of days. I just really gave myself time to unwind from the long commitments that I'd had. I was out on the long runs running for, hours and hours on a Sunday before anyone even got out of bed in my house. So, I kind of decided that I needed to take a little bit of a sabbatical from it. Well, I never really got the passion again. And I figured out after a period of time that I was a little bit depressed because I didn't have anywhere else to go. It was a bucket list item. I wasn't intending to be a perpetual marathon runner. It wasn't my objective or my goal. So now I was like, okay, now what do I do? I have all this time. I've established all these habits that are good habits, all these patterns. Now what do I do with myself? And so, I had to find another outlet, another means, another source. And I had other activities and hobbies that I was involved in addition to running. So I just needed to kind of put myself in a different place. And what that taught me was not to look at the goal as the end. It's not the accomplishment of where I'm going to get to. It's the journey in the process to get to that and enjoying that journey. And if I were to do it all over again, I would do it so significantly different. I would make those same commitments. I would still do the things that I did in order to achieve the goal, but I would love the journey. I would enjoy the physical fitness. I would enjoy the fact that, my body was transforming. My habits of food intake were very, very different. And I would start to be more aware of my surroundings in order to truly enjoy the journey and the process of that. But unfortunately, I didn't. It was all about achieving that goal of making that accomplishment. And I did it. It's off the list. My first marathon was a Disney marathon, which was totally insane, but it's off the list. I've accomplished it. And, life is moving on. But I wanted just to wrap this segment up on goals, is talk about a 7-step process for achieving those goals and milestones that you set for yourself. So I try to make it extremely simple in order to make them achievable, in addition to making and using that SMART goal concept. But the first thing I think we need to do is think positively about our goals and outcomes and think about them several times throughout the day. It's not as though we wake up and we go, I'm going to run a marathon, and that's the end of it, and think about it maybe once or twice. For me, quite honestly, when I was in the prep mode, I would drive the routes I intended to run that Sunday. I would spot out where I was going to drop water if I needed to drop water bottles somewhere, I was going to hide in a bush here at this part and this part, leave one there. And so I was very strategic in my thought process in order to make sure that it was obtainable. And so it was very, very much a conscious effort. It didn't just happen by chance. And I think when we have a big goal like that, and that marathon was just one of many of the goals within that period of time that I was just really driven to accomplish. So, just make sure that we revisit that. I've heard one person, talk about writing that goal on their mirror in the bathroom. And so you have that vision every time you're in the restroom, going to the bathroom, washing your hands, you look at that goal. It's right in front of your face. And I love that idea. And I've used that over the time too. It's just another way. If you want to put sticky notes up around the house, you want to put a card, keep it in your purse. For the longest time, I had one in my wallet, in my purse. And if I just was sitting around idle time, I'd take that out, refresh myself, envision that again. So again, have those great thoughts. And then take a look at what habits, by achieving that goal, you'll need to acquire. What that does is it begins to tell myself that, who I am today is not who I will be as I go through this journey and when I achieve that goal. So what do I need to learn to be or become through this process in order to really be successful? And then once you have that list of habits that new place looks like, then pick one and begin tomorrow working toward that goal. One thing I know that from a physical standpoint, I'm not too happy with the muscle formation in my arms. And so I've done some research and tried to find ways to do that. Well, you know what? If I want that to change, I have got to take the habit that is going to be included in that change, and then I've got to start it today. So I've kind of been wishy-washy, and if anything, I'm encouraging myself to do the exact same thing. So take that goal, make that habit change today, and then carry it forward. So I just want to ask, is there anyone maybe around you or in a group that could also lend some support or encouragement for you? So, maybe a family member, maybe you could put an accountability partner in the mix, depending upon what your goal to accomplish is. I heard and saw a neighbor earlier saying, I'd love to have an accountability partner at the gym. If you go, let's connect. So again, that takes courage to do that, but I know all of you have the courage that it takes to make that happen. It's going to hold your feet accountable more than you can ever imagine. So I know another listener that is an avid bicyclist, and I am so impressed when I see her out riding. It just amazes me that she's just so committed to that ride that she gets out there all the time. And honestly, I believe that her riding has attributed to her desire to eat healthier. And of course, she enjoys a glass of wine every once in a while. But just the fact that she's so committed to riding that bike and getting out there, even in this hottest of summer days, just inspires me to continue to work towards those goals. That we're never too old, we're never too young, it's never too hot, it's never too cold. We're not going to be willing to make an excuse to not make it happen. And then have the courage to reach out for that support. That's step number 5, because, at a specific moment in time, I would have never met 15-year friends had I not had the courage to leave my number and ask them to call me to begin running together. And we had lots of run events together. We ran on Thanksgiving. We did turkey runs every year for several years. We just had a lot of great memories. And, I love the fact that we're still friends today. But don't have a problem with that. Pick up the phone, make the conversation, do whatever it takes in order to make that connection happen. And then, of course, step number 6 in the process is to begin implementing that another new behavior. We've got one down, and now it's time to pick up the next new behavior. Maybe it's going to be waking up 30 minutes earlier to get that exercise in before you start your day. Or maybe it's going to be sitting quietly, reading, and enjoying things before you go to bed. There's all sorts of ways that we can fit and prioritize those things that are important to us, with usually some slight adjustments in the habits that we have. And then last but not least, of course, step number 7 is to enjoy the journey by celebrating those wins. Celebrate them. Whether it's a small piece of dark chocolate, one day, just celebrate the win, because those are the moments that propel us to continue to thrive and drive to that bigger goal and meeting that target head on in order to get the things that we want out of life. So there are 3 other tips, though, to become the best version of yourself and achieve all of the goals that you desire. So that was our 7-step process to achieve them. But practice mindfulness, being present, being in the moment. And then if you need to find that mentor or coach, by all means, do it. Reach out to them. It doesn't mean that if you need a coach or mentor now that it's going to be forever. It's just for now. So pick up the phone, go out the internet, write out the email, send the request, do something in order to begin today. And then don't beat yourself up if you don't make the mark. You've given it effort. You are actually much closer than you probably ever gave yourself credit for. And just redirect. Just make that shift, make that adjustment, get back on course, and keep moving forward. So don't beat yourself up. I do want to recognize, though, one superstar. If you're not a tennis player, Coco Gauff, she was an amazing 19-year-old that won the U.S. Open a few short days ago. But she said when she was overwhelmed with joy that she realized that she'd won the U.S. Open on Saturday, and her victory still didn't really even seem real. So, those athletes that really practice and rise to that level is just amazing to me. And then to do it at 19 years old just totally blows my mind. But she is a triumphant 19-year-old that made history by becoming the youngest American to win the title since Serena Williams back in 1999. So I just wanted to send a big shout out and congratulate her because that's an amazing accomplishment. I hope you are able to take away a few tips, maybe a few ideas about accomplishing the goals that you have set forth or will set forth moving forward, and or some time maybe to reflect on why you haven't achieved those goals up until now, and maybe what you're going to do different moving forward in order to be the one that says, yes, I did it. But the past doesn't equal the present or the future. So if things didn't work out before in the past, if you didn't achieve the goal, leave it there. It's time to move on today as a brand new day and a future that is bright. So let us know in the comments below how you plan on staying focused on your goals so that you can achieve even more success ahead. I can't wait to hear. So go ahead, leave your comment. I can't wait to see it. Let me know what's on your mind, and be sure to stay tuned for next week's show. I'm not quite sure what we're going to talk about. It could be a grab bag. It could be a special guest. I'm not quite sure. But I just want you to focus on your goals and obtaining your goals and having the best life that you can. Be sure to like, share, and stay tuned and share it with all of your friends, because you know what? Us girls need to stick together. And I can't wait to talk to you again next week. So until then, I've left a couple of links below in books that have been powerful to me. The first one is by Darren Hardy. It's called The Compound Effect: How to Multiply Your Success in One Simple Step at a Time. So that has really broken things down very, very easily. The Art of Exceptional Living by Jim Rohn, and then How to Own Your Own Mind by Napoleon Hill. So those are just a couple of quick reads, possibly, to get you on the right track. And possibly, if you're even an audible person or an audiobook listener, those might be some great tools to listen to on your walks or while you're exercising or cooking or whatever those goals and objectives that you're wanting to achieve. But thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.